When a governing political party slips into the 20s in public polling, the political math usually dictates a total collapse. Yet, right now in New Zealand, the ruling coalition is managing to cling to power despite its lead party hemorrhaging public support. This document from the recent RNZ and Freshwater Strategy poll shows exactly where that fracture is happening. The National Party has dropped below the critical 30% survival threshold, down to 29%, trailing the Labour opposition sitting at 35%. The pressure extends directly to the top. Across multiple commissioned polls, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon's personal approval metrics have sharply declined, with net favourability dropping deeply into the negative. This chart illustrates the mathematical lifeline keeping the government afloat. The coalition holds a razor-thin 61 to 59 seat majority. National holds only 36 seats, depending entirely on minor party leverage, 15 seats from New Zealand First and 10 from ACT, to stay in power. This seat distribution points to a deeply fractured electorate. The government is surviving right now, but that survival relies exclusively on the minor parties holding their ground, while the primary governing party actively loses its own base. To understand why voters are abandoning the main governing party, we have to look at their fiscal choices. Finance Minister Nicola Willis recently enacted a $2.9 billion tax subsidy allocated specifically for property investors. This chart contrasts that multi-billion-dollar landlord allocation against the simultaneous spike in child poverty. Currently, a 10-year high of 169,300 tamariki, or children, are living in material hardship. The polling drop also tracks closely with a pivot in healthcare policy. Within its first 3 months in office, the government abolished Aka Whai Ora, the Maori Health Authority. This entity was established specifically to address the fact that Maori patients often face significantly higher mortality rates than the general population. By removing these specialized community-led services, the government is returning to a centralized model, one that advocates point out has spent decades failing to close the health gap that tailored care was beginning to bridge. The polling suggests voters are drawing a direct line between these choices. When a multi-billion-dollar subsidy for investors arrives at the same time as a 10-year peak in child hardship, the public shift reflects a rejection of that specific economic trade-off. The public alienation reached a critical mass when the government announced it would legally reverse a court decision granting indigenous rights to the Takutai Moana, the coastal foreshore and seabed. Tangata Whānau, the indigenous people of the land, responded with immense scale. Massive public mobilizations, like the Toitu Tiriti movement, brought tens of thousands of people onto the streets to physically push back against the legislative reversals. This flowchart maps that street-level mobilization directly into the polling data. We can see rangatahi, or youth, along with women, Maori, and Pacifica voters, actively breaking away from the center-right coalition and migrating toward the opposition bloc. The only structural pillar offsetting those losses and preventing a total polling collapse is a steady hold on an older, predominantly male demographic, remaining on the right side of the distribution. A government that alienates its youth and indigenous populations while relying entirely on an aging voter base creates a mathematically brittle coalition. That brittle foundation brings us back to the 61 to 59 parliamentary split. With the ongoing demographic exodus, the coalition's working majority now sits entirely within the margin of error. Secondary tracking, including the Roy Morgan poll, indicates a dead heat. A minor voting shift in just a few Maori electorates is enough to completely erase the coalition's 3-seat buffer before midnight on election night. The coalition's agenda has galvanized a multi-generational, culturally organized movement. This is a hardening of identity among Maori voters, who see these legislative changes as a direct challenge to their role in the country's future. The math does not lie. The coalition's dropping numbers are a direct reflection of the physical and financial pressure felt in these communities. The policy agenda they chose to enact is proving to be the exact catalyst threatening their political survival.